Hi there, I'm John Lebensold, and today what I'm going to be doing is building on the last video where we were building views, and we are going to be looking at a new concept now, which is how we can start working with counting and grouping by. So in our last video we were looking at the in clause, and we were using the in clause in order to be able to essentially get collections of IDs and then use those collections of IDs to generate certain result sets in a many-to-many relationship. So we have this little SQL script that we've been building over time with a post category table, a post table, a category table, and an author table. So in this example, we're going to simplify things a little bit, and we're just going to be focusing on the post and the author. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new file. I'm going to save this as count.sql, and we are just going to start by basically just using the author table and the post table. So I'm just going to add these drop table if exists, and then I will have my author table and my post table, and that looks good. I just want to delete everything when I run this script, so I'm just going to add those drop statements, and we're going to forget about categories for now, just so that we can keep things nice and simple. So if I select all and I copy this and I go into my terminal here, access MySQL. I need to start my MySQL server. Start my server. And once this goes up, which it looks like it has, then I should be able to connect. And I'll just paste in these rows, and if I say show tables, I'm going to get the three tables that I was talking about, actually the two tables that I was talking about, and then actually I have to remove my views. So drop view political post and drop view post with, actually we can probably leave the post with authors, since if I do a select star from post with authors, this should still work. And we're going to get the title, the content, and the name of the author. Now, my first example is going to be to actually do a count on the number of posts in the table. And to do this is very simple. It's a very simple thing to do with SQL. It's just a matter of using the count clause. The count function is actually a function built into MySQL, and it can be great if you want to tally something. Something to remember, especially, for example, if you want to count statistics or if you wanted to count traffic going to your website, it would be much faster for you to just insert records and then only perform the count when you want to report than it would be to actually update those records every single time. For example, if I had a statistics row for in a site information table, and then it had number of hits on Tuesday as a row, and then I had 1, and then when a new person came to my site I would update that to 2, and then another person I would update that to 3. The disadvantage of that approach is that if I had multiple people going to the site, then I'd have essentially a row locking problem where I'd have multiple hits to the same row in my database to update that one number and bring it from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. So a better way of doing things like that is to have massive amounts of insertions and then just to run a count query and let the database handle the calculations that are going to be necessary. So in the same way, we're going to look at these rows and we're going to see if we can perform a count on them. To start with, I'm just going to look at the actual post table. So if I do select star from post, then I'm going to get 4 records. Now, I can also perform a count by just saying select count and then put in the star from post. And instead, I'm going to get the count column and the number of rows that it finds. In the same way, I can say select count as number underscore of underscore posts from posts. And then you'll notice that the column name is no longer going to be count star, which is actually a very difficult thing to pull out of, it's not a nice thing to pull out of SQL if you're dealing with PHP, since it's nice to have legible column names. And there you go. Now, again, we can do some where clauses. So I could say where author ID is equal to 4, or is equal to 1 rather, and then I'll get 2 number of posts. And if I say 3, then I'm going to get 1 in terms of number of posts. So basically, if I go back to my original example, you can see that when I say where author ID is 1, it's basically doing a subset of my table, and then we're performing the count operation. So very simple. Now, another thing that we can do here is we can, of course, start looking at what a group by will do. So let's say we wanted to group the posts by the number of authors. Well, to do that would be very simple. We would start with the statement that we had before, which was select star for count as, and in this case I'm going to call it article count, from post P, where p.authorID equals 1. And again, we're going to get an article count of 2. We know how to essentially count the number of rows, right? If I do a select star from post P and I turn this into a count statement, then I'm going to get a number of rows. We know that much. We also know that if I say where p.authorID is equal to 1, I'm going to get the number of posts for that particular author, right? Now, I can slowly build up something that will look very similar to what we're trying to accomplish in terms of getting the number of articles or the number of posts that a person has written. So if I start off by saying, okay, select star or select p.star, comma, count star as post count or article count from post P group by, and this is the group by statement that I was talking about, author ID, then what's going to happen is that if I go back to our select star from post P just to do a comparison, you'll see that we've added another column called post count. So we're getting, and also instead of getting 4 rows, we're now getting 3 rows. So what's happening is that the group by is taking place is actually grouping up all of the elements based on author ID, and then the count statement is counting based on the group by clause, and then we're getting this new column called post count. Now, we can take this a step further by actually adding a left join. So instead of just saying p.star, if I wanted to actually get the number of posts that an author has completed, then I really only need the author ID, and then I could get the post count, and also I would want to get a.email and a.name, comma, and then I'll just do my left join. So then I could do from post P, left join, author A on p.authorID equals a.id, and watch what happens. So now we've got this beautiful table that tells us exactly the number of posts that each one of our authors has contributed to our website. So this is a very easy way of using the count queries as a method of storing data. So instead of actually going back to my original example when I started this video where I said, if you want to handle the number, if you want to track the number of statistics or the number of hits that you're getting on your website, instead of just updating a record and keep incrementing it, use the count statements. Let the database do the number crunching for you. In the same way, if you've got a blog and you've got multiple contributors and you want to be able to show the number of contributions that this person has done to your website, rather than having to update 2 statements, you're better off using something like a count query where you can calculate these things and then, create a view out of that and then return that to your PHP application. Another thing that you can do, of course, in the event that you've got a scenario, I'm actually just going to copy this into my text editor. And I'm going to create a scenario here where I have a null, a zero author, no author situation. Select all and then paste it in. And then what I'm going to end up with, this is a scenario where we don't have an author for a particular post, right? If we don't have an author for a particular post, we're going to get some kind of weird scenario here where we've got the null posts also showing up. And if this is the case, then a very simple way of fixing that is before you do your group by, you just add a where clause and you say, okay, where author ID is not null. And there you go. You've got exactly the same data set. So the last little bit that I just want to show you about group by and count is that we can, of course, turn this into a view where author underscore ID is not null. So with all this in place, just going to copy this, hit enter, make sure everything is working, and it looks like I'm getting an SQL syntax error. Oh, left join and then the where clause. Order does matter. So if I refresh or if I run this again, then I'm going to get the necessary query, and then of course I can say create or replace view, and I'm going to call this view article or post count. And if I do this, hit enter, and then I can just do select star from post count. And I'm going to get a beautiful table with all the information that I need. So this is just another example. It's a very simple example of how you can use count and group by to effectively add new tables and new amounts of information to your database schema without altering your schema and actually using the database to do the counting for you. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how we can do backup and restore with MySQL. And then from there, we're going to be looking at timestamps. Actually, we're going to start by looking at timestamps. After that, we'll look at backup and restore. And then after that, I'm going to show you a little bit related to the MySQL search engine. Thanks for listening.